Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the third in the series of Ask the Ministers. I'm delighted to be joined live in the studio this evening by three of our government ministers and by you, our audience online. We have 90 minutes this evening for you to pose your questions to three of the people that you have chosen to represent you and to govern our island. And so my question is, what are you going to ask the ministers? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our online audience and to our panellists here tonight. My name is Alexia McClure and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Jersey Business. It's an absolute pleasure to be asked to facilitate this conversation tonight. And so I thought I would start by introducing the people who are going to be speaking to you. We have Deputy Gregory Guida, Minister for Home Affairs and Assistant Minister for the Environment. You're very welcome.
Good evening.
Deputy Kevin Lewis, Minister for Infrastructure.
Good evening, Alexia.
You're very welcome. And Deputy Rowland Huelin, Chief Assistant Minister with particular responsibility for the population policy.
Good evening.
Very welcome. And a very welcome to you all online. Of course, this evening is all about your opportunity to ask questions of our panellists. And so it's really important that you tell us what your questions are. And to do that, it would be great if you could go on to slido.com, where we have a stream of questions. That's slido.com. Search for Ask the Ministers so that you can join the event and pop your question into the event. My job tonight is to ask the questions that you want to pose to the ministers and to know which ones you're particularly interested in. It would be great if you could give a thumbs up to the questions that are already there, and then I can see the ones that are most important to you. So to give you an opportunity to start putting your questions into the event, we're going to just get a little bit of an overview of what our ministers are up to. So, Deputy Huelin, what an extraordinary 18 months we've had. COVID, which we hadn't expected, Brexit, which we had expected. Give us an idea of what your role as Assistant Chief Minister involves.
Well, actually, I only came into the role a year ago. When I was first elected, I was offered or invited to be Home Affairs and Scrutiny and on the Public Accounts Committee as well as the Planning Committee. So a year ago, the Chief Minister asked me to bring the migration controls policy to the Assembly, which was successful in March. The Assembly adopted it in March, and the regulations are currently going through law drafting to return to the Assembly this particular year. So that's one area. The other I've obviously been working on is a population policy, which I've been invited to again bring back to the Assembly. In fact, the Assembly asked us to bring it to the Assembly at the end of the year, and I'm working very actively on that. And that's the reason I think I've been asked to join this evening.
Great, thank you for that. And Deputy Lewis, your team at Infrastructure has a critical role of managing our transport, coastline, public space, buildings. Explain where you spend most of your time.
Indeed, Alexia. It literally covers the whole island, everything from sort of drainage upwards, really. It's been a very eventful year. Obviously, no one saw COVID coming, but it was a very late night meeting in Broad Street. It was decided to build the Nightingale wing, so we had to get that one up and running as soon as possible. And I was absolutely delighted that everybody came together, from electricity, water, many companies who are normally in competition with each other, working side by side to get the Nightingale wing up and running. So it was a wonderful effort. And of course, we didn't have the vaccine at that time. So it was one of prevention, which I would do again. I've been criticised for it, but I thought it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Great.
So that took up a lot of the time.
So definitely a focus of the last 18 months. And Deputy Guida, Minister for Home Affairs, you're responsible for keeping us safe, and Assistant Minister for the Environment, which is a very interesting role. Explain what fills your inbox.
Hundreds of emails a day and very, very eclectic,
Yes,
which is what I actually like about the role. The Home Affairs, of course, oversees the police, the customs and immigration, fire services, ambulance, things that you wouldn't think about, like the superintendent registrar. So all those services, which are quite independent and do completely different things.
Right.
And of course, in environment, my role was initially confined to the natural environment, but now I'm also a backup for the island plan in case anything goes wrong. Of course, I've had an interesting role in Brexit, as you may know.
Excellent. I'm sure we'll come back to that during the course of our conversation. So, great to see questions coming in on Slido, so thank you very much for that. Just remember to give the thumbs up to questions that you see on there already, and please feel free to keep adding your specific questions as we go through the evening. So I'm sure there's a number of business leaders watching and dialing in tonight, and those of you will know who are leaders of business will know that Jersey Business is set up to support the growth and development of business on Ireland. We've got a unique insight into businesses across all sorts of industries, and so I thought it would be quite useful to start with a couple of questions that we know the business community are asking as a way of kicking off our conversation tonight. So, Deputy Huelin, I'm come to you again. Your role is responsible for population and for migration control, and you're obviously in the middle of developing a population policy. I think it would be useful to explain the difference between those two, and particularly how you're managing the tension between us needing to have more skills, more people on the island, and potentially creating a policy that's going to try and stop people from coming in.
Well, thank you for the hard one first. It's actually more complicated than that, because we also have immigration. So we've got immigration, migration and population, and I will try and explain the differences. Immigration is where people come into the common travel area or the UK and the Crown dependencies. So we in Jersey are an entrance into the UK. So we are bound by that legislation. There's controls that people have to have a visa or license to come into the UK. What we do within migration is anybody can come here from within the common travel area. However, what we do is quite simply have to control that by where they lay their head at night, i.e. where they get a home and where they work.
Okay.
So therefore, that is where the migration controls policy fits in. These are merely levers that allow decisions to be made. They are not the decisions themselves. They don't control the numbers. They don't make any of those decisions. It's purely enable those to happen. So what we are doing, or what I'm targeted on doing, is bringing a population policy. And a population policy will have to make the policy in order to say how those levers are going to be pulled. And I hope I haven't confused everybody there, but it's taken me quite a long time to understand this myself, and it's quite a complex situation.
Yes. Quite a lot of different elements at play, and obviously all competing with each other. I'm sure we will come back with maybe some more specific questions on that during the course of the evening. So thank you very much for that sort of overview. Deputy Lewis, you've got the critical job of the buildings and the infrastructure, and we have seen the IPCC report on climate change just being issued in the last 24 hours. We know the government of Jersey has declared a climate change emergency and has a target for being carbon neutral in 9 years, which isn't really that long away. What is your focus in terms of looking at Jersey's carbon neutral strategy, and how does that govern the decisions that you're making at the moment?
Well, it's right across the board, really. It's obviously we're trying to increase cycling. We're trying to put in more and more cycle lanes. Obviously, there'll be a phasing out in the not too distant future of diesels and petrols. So obviously we're trying to encourage people to use biodiesel if they have diesel vehicles. And there's synthetic petrols coming on E5 and E10 in the not too distant future, which is a good stopgap because electrification is coming, but not just electrification, but probably hydrogen for larger vehicles as well. So it's all part of the mix to keep things going. Obviously, we're very concerned about the changes in tidal movements. We're increasing the heights of the seawalls. We've done an awful lot of work down by the Gunsight Cafe, which even though it's not a high wall, it's actually curved to throw the waves back out to sea. So that's made a terrific difference. It's a wonderful piece of engineering, and we hope to extend that. Not just coastal flooding we're worried about, but obviously inland flooding with heavy rainfalls. It's not been unknown in the world of late to have a whole year's worth of rain in 12 hours. But obviously we're very concerned with high rainfall. We're doing an awful lot with stormwater separation to get the stormwater out of the sewerage system, because we don't want to be treating stormwater that can go straight to sea. So it's all part of the mix at the moment. I've had some personal experience with flooding. I was in Tewkesbury in 2007, delivering food and water in my amphibious truck. And I managed to get digs. And when you're lying in bed at night with a candle by the side of your bed on the table because the electricity's gone, and you can hear the water lapping against the 5th step on the staircase, that does focus your mind. And I'm very aware of flooding and coastal flooding, and it's all part of the mix that we're trying to bring in Jersey as a matter of prevention.
Great, that's a really good explanation, thank you. And I'm sure we're going to come back at some point this evening to the sort of role of how we as islanders can contribute to that, and also interested to understand the sort of carrot and stick approach of the government by way of how do you incentivise people to change, and then how do you maybe make it life difficult if they're not. So I'm sure we'll come back to that, so thank you. And Deputy Guida, interesting mix of responsibilities that you're involved in. And one of the areas that has been widely publicised, obviously with the change in Brexit, has been our relationship with our nearest neighbour, France, and their fishing industry, which has caused a lot of very visible a challenge for Jersey. What do you think, and how do you see our relationship with France evolving in this new scenario that we're in post-Brexit, and particularly in relation to maybe our commercial relationship and transport links?
Yeah, so that actually, you were involved with Brexit from the start, and you understand how complex it was. I mean, what we saw of it, I think we did well, because the outcome in Jersey has been reasonably quiet, apart from a few industries that are still struggling. It was very, very, very complex, and it took years to unravel. And it's almost sad that the last little thing is going to damage our relationship with our nearest neighbour, because they have decided to grab it and use it as a political football. Yeah. So it is a little bit sad. I hope we took a very pragmatic approach to it. And you know that this wasn't negotiated by us; it was negotiated for us by the UK with the EU. I think what they came up with was very pragmatic, and it was basically there is this amount of effort going on in your waters. We'll keep the amount of effort and start from there, right. And then you can manage the sustainability of fishing in your waters, which we thought was not the best as we could get, but certainly a very, very good starting point. Unfortunately, there were regional elections in France, and there are national elections next year. And I think they grabbed this as a very, very good subject to distract people from other things such as COVID and unemployment and other problems that they may have.
But there's definitely an opportunity, do you think, to create more links and more business?
I think we need to separate the issues.
Yes.
And I've been trying very, very hard to do that. And the whole Brexit ministerial group, including my minister, have been trying very, very hard to do that and separate the issues and say, okay, we have this particular problem with fishing, but that's that's just an argument about definitions. The rest of it, we are still your neighbors. We still want to trade with you. We still want to open our borders to you. So yes, I think we're trying to. It's 12 pages in the whole trade cooperation agreement, which is 500 and some.
Yes. And obviously there's quite a big impact and overlap between Brexit and some of the sort of commercial impacts, and also the movement of people, which links back to some of the, our population and migration policies, I suppose, in that it's a little bit more difficult. It's more difficult for EU nationals to come and work in Jersey, because I guess Jersey is a gateway to the EU. So that's putting pressure, I think, on people not being able to come here, and I guess impacting both of your roles.
Absolutely. A year ago, they only had to care about our migration policies, so work permits and housing permits or qualifications. Now they also have to deal with immigration, which is work licenses. I have the same problem, but yes, work licenses, which is what the Jersey government decides, and on the other hand, for the TCA, work permits, which are part of how you get a visa.
Right.
So those are completely new regulations, and it's a new filter, and it's not very straightforward to go past that. So we will see many less people coming from the EU.
Yeah. And so I think that sort of throws back, doesn't it, to the policies that we're looking at, you're looking at trying to develop at the moment. And there's a consultation going on, isn't there, around the population policy. So I know that you want people to get involved in that. In what way do you want islanders' feedback on that?
We've been doing various consultations all year on this with various industry groups, Jersey Business, etc., the various honorary consuls over here, Skills Jersey, etc. But one of the things we want to do is to talk to the vast numbers of people in the island, 100,000 out there, to fill in the questionnaire and the survey that we've submitted that is live now. This is when I do my plug.
Yes,
and
do your plug.
It's on gov.je, and if you go in the search button, it's under consultations. We urge you to fill that in as full as you can. There's obviously some tick boxes which we can assess very quickly. Computers can do that. There's a lot of free text for you to share your experiences and share what you wish within that. And every single one of those will be read and brought together, I assure you of that. Any challenges, population@gov.je. Even I have actually delivered a hard copy to a 94-year-old in my parish recently, so I will go to that lengths to make sure everybody has an opportunity to submit their ideas to us. We're hoping within those ideas, a lot of this is not new. I mean, people have been trying to bring a population policy here for sort of 20 years, 30 years. In fact, I think it's the 1300s. It was first mooted that Jersey was too busy. So it's not new. We want to bring something together on one piece of paper, one policy that people can understand and work towards. The other thing is, if you want a hard copy, I believe it's in the co-op, I believe it's in the GREF, it's in the parish halls, and it's somewhere else. So please get engaged, give us your ideas. It's not ours, it's your population policy for the future. So we really want to hear from all of you.
Great, thank you for that. And I know that from a climate change point of view, we've obviously just had the Citizens' Assembly on climate change, and that report has come out very recently. That, I presume, is influencing where you're going to, you and your department, Deputy Lewis, are putting your efforts and where you sort of want to galvanise some action.
Absolutely. We're very much on the same page with the Citizens' Assembly. The time frame is, what I say, extremely ambitious. A lot of it they want to bring forward to 2025, which I don't think, with the best will in the world, we can hit that. But, I think the UK government now has given an exemption for hybrid vehicles, which will be, I think, 2040. So, we need to be slightly ahead of the UK, but not that far ahead. Because I've always said that I would like to bring the laws in here just prior to the UK so that we don't become a dumping ground for vehicles they can't sell in the UK. Right. But there's an awful lot of work to do at the moment. I mean, electrification-wise is is going to be a major thing. Obviously, we need to speak to our partners at Jersey Electricity, because we need charging points put in. In all our multi-storey car parks, we have at least 2 charging points. I think Pier Road we have about 8, I believe, and that's going to be increased. But lots of people, obviously, if they leave the car in their driveway, or indeed if they have a garage, charging is not a problem. But if you live in an apartment and you leave your car on the road, then obviously it's a little more complex. So we need on-road charging if that's the way we're going to go. But there's an awful lot of work to do, and it's going to be very hard to hit that particular mark.
And are you, I would imagine that people will be looking and saying, if I'm buying an electric vehicle, I need do I need a separate charging point at home? And are there going to be incentives around, you know, because those sorts of cars are more expensive, etc. You know, those sorts of questions, I think, are in people's minds in terms of what is the government, what is your approach going to be to enable people and our viewers online to actually, you know, move and shift over from what is actually an expensive purchase when you come to buy a car?
They are expensive. Like anything else, when it's new, the prices will come down in time. The second-hand market for electric vehicles is quite reasonable now, but obviously an awful lot of work to do. Not just electrification, as I mentioned before. There's very other, you know, biofuels, RD100 diesel, and the E5 and E10 petrols coming down the line very shortly. There's a lot to do in the meanwhile that we can to reduce the pollution. What does worry me is the very, very large vehicles. Down at Belazan, we have, I believe, 10 vehicles we're running RD100, the green diesel on, and they're working perfectly well. But obviously we want to phase out diesel altogether in the long run. But if you have a huge, for instance, a huge commercial digger working on a building site, they could be running for 8 to 10 hours a day. So to convert that to electricity will be difficult. You'll probably need a 20-ton digger. You need probably 8 tons of batteries to keep it going for possibly 4 or 5 hours. So experiments are going on in the UK at the moment with hydrogen engines for the more powerful equipment that's needed. But further down the line with cars, obviously, and buses, electric is coming online. We do have a problem sourcing electric vehicles, electric buses, should I say, for Jersey, but we're working with our partners at Liberty Bus, and we've had one bus over that's been electric, that's gone back, and hopefully next weekend we're going to get a single decker over and see how that goes. That's our partners at Liberty Bus, because they own the rolling stock. And that'll be a good experiment to see how that is.
Great.
But we've had a problem with the width of buses as well, because we have very narrow roads and lanes.
Right.
The only comparative I have is certain parts of Cornwall that have equally small roads.
Interesting challenge, but one that obviously is being faced in a number of other areas. So I suppose what we need to do is to make sure that we're keeping on track with those initiatives as well. And I presume the government is also looking at its own fleet and trying to lead the way in terms of, you know, you must have one of the biggest fleets on the island. So I am assuming that that is part of your strategy to...
Indeed, we have, I believe, about 12 electric vehicles, which are shared amongst the various departments. But we have things from small vans up to heavy tankers running on the RD100 green diesel, and reports coming back is perfectly good performance, no loss in performance whatsoever. So there's obviously a slight price rise with the green diesel, but that's something that we need to get a hold of.
Great, that's fantastic, thank you. So I think we are going to move to our first question from the audience, and we are coming to Colin Solomon, who is joining us on a Zoom call. So I'm hoping that we can cue Colin in and see if he can hear us. Colin, can you hear us?
I can indeed. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes, we can hear you. So would you like to pose
I'd like to congratulate Deputy Lewis for heading my question off at the pass by confirming that a single-decker bus, electric, is about to arrive. But I'd like him to dwell upon the difference between Jersey roads and Cornish roads. As a man from Devon, I've driven on both, and there's really not much difference. If an electric bus can cope with Cornwall, it can cope with St. Wands. My question then is for both ministers and the Assistant Chief Minister, which is to ask why the latest report into performances at the hospital was not to be publicly released until 2022. Do they think that's acceptable?
Who would like
to first?
Please go for it.
Well, thanks for the question, Colin. It was, I mean, basically, things have changed in the last few years, that we're trying to be more child-friendly and parent and child-friendly to get buggies on, and obviously disabled-friendly. So the buses are much lower. The wheels are obviously further to the front and rear to accommodate more seating and, as I say, lower down to the road to help people with mobility problems. And this causes a greater turning circle. I mean, please ask any of the Jersey bus drivers. And you need a large turning circle to get around many of the corners, because we don't have too many pavements in Jersey. And it's just one of those things. We have granite walls that are not very forgiving. But many of the buses have to go on the wrong side of the road at the moment when approaching corners, which is not a good idea, but it's something they have to do.
So you're looking at Cornwall and other areas, and you're trying to understand whether or not what they've got there will work here.
Oh, absolutely. But I say we're looking not just at the buses, but obviously electric buses as well.
Sure.
And this was an initiative by our partners at Liberty Bus.
Great. Okay. Thanks. Well, hopefully that answers one part of your question, Colin. And the second part, which I think, Deputy Huelin, you're going to have a response to, was about the hospital report that has or hasn't been released.
Now, I think we are discussing the Health and Community Services performance report, which is not a direct area of my responsibility. I'm on the political oversight group for the hospital, but that is not the same thing. I have to admit, I think the first question was what was our reaction to this report not being published, and I have to admit that I was somewhat taken aback by it, and I think others have been as well. So as I understand it, and I'm giving an update, not my responsibility, that the report will go to scrutiny on the 16th of August and will be published in full in the forthcoming weeks, and there will be a media briefing and QA session on that as well. I'm sorry I can't be directly responsible for that to answer it, but that's what I'm being asked to forward on.
Okay,
Sorry.
so watch this space, and there'll be something coming out shortly.
It's going to scrutiny, and I'm sure scrutiny will look at it, as they do, very, very seriously, and hopefully turn it around as fast as they can, so it does get into the public domain, and I think that's the right thing to do.
Great. Okay, hopefully, Colin, that answers your question, and thank you very much for that. We're going to come now to a few questions from our Zoom. Sorry, not from our Zoom, from our Slido. So thank you to everybody who has been adding a question to Slido. For those of you who don't know how to do that, I can just remind you quickly to go on to slido.com, which is slido.com. Search for Ask the Ministers and join the event, and then you can see the questions that have been put up there. You can add questions of your own, and please give a thumbs up to the ones that are on there already if you particularly want them to be answered, because they'll go up to the top of the list, and I can see then that they are the ones that are most important for you. So we'll move on to some of these questions now, and the first one, which has had quite a few thumbs up, I think might be relevant for you, Deputy Guida. So the question is, Jersey has effectively been without a substance abuse policy since the conclusion of the Building a Safer Society strategy in 2016-19. Will the new drug and alcohol strategy be delivered, including the proposed public consultation, before the end of the current term of this Assembly?
Well, I've got good and bad news. So there's some interesting news, is that Constable Norman was quite keen to get this started. And we had quite a large meeting with Health, of course, because they are, with Home Affairs, Health is the other department completely involved in this. And we had the surprise to see that none of us was terribly strict on the notion of liberalizing some of the use. And actually, I noted that the question was not about substance abuse, it was about substance use.
Sorry, my mistake.
So in any case, we've restarted it. So this is now a proper work stream. We are hiring right now somebody to deal exclusively with it, but it will be led by the health department.
Okay.
So it is something that they will take on because we will take it from the health side rather than from the police side.
Right, okay. So being led by health, in the pipeline at the moment, can we expect then?
In days, we'll have somebody actually whose job it is to get this policy working.
Great, okay. So I guess there might be some announcement about that coming shortly I'm
sure there'll be a press release about the hiring of that person. We must leave them some time to work after that.
Yes.
But there will be news during this term and then maybe some results.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I think the next question is for Deputy Huelin. Why are we not considering capping our population instead of planning more housing when our infrastructure and green space is already being squeezed?
Why are we not considering capping our population? I don't want to preempt population policy because I don't want to influence what people submit within the responses. However, I see it as looking holistically and trying to manage three key tensions. And that tension number one is our economy and our finances. Tension number two is our society and how we look after people. And tension number three is the environment and how we protect the environment. And everybody's going to have their preference there. And therefore, for 2/3 of people will ultimately be disappointed. But my goal is to bring something that is the quality of life for everybody in the island in that balanced area. The trouble with capping the population policy is, well, we can't do that. We can't control our ageing population. We can't control how many people are born in the island as easily. Another challenge we have is there are 20,000 people who live outside Jersey that are entitled to move to Jersey tomorrow. And what do? Say no to those people who have a lifelong expectation potentially to return in retirement? I confess that's what I did. If we do that, if we start capping a population, we then have to decide who we allow in to fulfill the key roles that this island needs in order to exist fundamentally. We need key skills in areas like health, doctors, other professions, and I know we've been talking about our economic migrants, if we want to call them, who will be working in hospitality and agriculture. How do we then decide which ones we say yes to and which ones we say no to? Because how do you make a difference between, say, a heart surgeon and somebody within the finance sector when there's only one slot? So it's absolutely impossible to do. Now, as far as the housing is concerned, the problem with housing is supply and demand. We have a massive imbalance between the supply that we have and the demand that we particularly need. And so we do have to address that, and there are ways of we're setting about doing that, and that's something that Deputy Labby is doing in his new capacity as the Housing Minister. I think all I say is it is an incredibly complicated subject, but what we have to do is focus on is, the well-being overall of the 100,000 people that we represent.
That's a very complex area, as you say, and I know that in the last Ask the Ministers, the Deputy Labby was here and talked about, I think, the new strategy that he is developing, and also there's been quite a lot of talk recently, I think, about the sort of dependency between the number of working people and the number of people who aren't working and how we balance that.
We have a dependency ratio that is not attractive in the Western world. A dependency ratio is the trade-off between those people who are, shall we say, economic active and those people that aren't. With an ageing population, we have more and more people who are retired, and that doesn't mean to say they're economically active, but they're not in the full working area, they're not paying social security, for the sake of argument. And obviously we have students up to the age of 18. I mean another fact which is again plays to the tensions is that if we were to freeze the population, that has an ongoing impact on the amount of income we generate, both tax and social security in full, that if we leave it at the same level, we effectively peter and run out of money. I haven't got the graph in front of me, but it's in 20 or 30 years' time, we run out of money. So if we freeze it, the only alternative is to increase social securities and increase taxes to maintain that fund and make to our ability to provide the services we do. It's just what we do. We provide health services, we provide pensions, and we provide education. So it's not financially attractive. I mean, I think you'll probably ask anybody if they'd like to work longer, for sake of argument, and pay less tax. Well, they say, no, well, we don't want to pay any more tax, we don't want to work longer anyway. So there's a lot of compromises that are going to have to be made, I think is the message, Alexia.
Right, okay, that's great. And your policy, when it comes out, will hopefully address some of those, we hope. Anyway, let's move on from that vibrant conversation. So the next question for you, Deputy Lewis, what about Broad Street? When are you going to open Broad Street again? Businesses didn't want it closed, shoppers didn't want it closed, and neither did taxis. Who exactly were consulted on this? That, I think, is a very lively debate.
Neither did I, was the final answer to that one. No, I did announce that it was going to be reopened. Advice was given to me that because of COVID, people were bunching up on the bus stop. Plus, it wasn't just Broad Street, it was further down the road at Charing Cross, where when the traffic is flowing, there could be 20 to 40 people waiting at the crossing to cross there in front of traffic. And there was lots of bunching up. So it was decided it would be a good idea on a temporary basis to close Broad Street, which is what I did. And that was successful. Then I received advice that because of the vaccine rollout and everything, that it was no longer necessary to keep Broad Street closed. So I announced the fact that I would be opening Broad Street again, and a proposition was brought by constables in Huelin to keep it closed, which was accepted by the states. I brought an amendment to that just to allow buses to go down, which was accepted.
Okay. Do you think this is going to be an ongoing debate then, or
quite possibly,
or have we reached a conclusion?
It's very emotive. The people are vehemently for or vehemently against. There's no in between.
Right.
But it's something that's going to run and run, I'm afraid.
Okay, but you're on it.
Indeed.
Excellent. Okay, and a question which I'm going to split actually between you, Deputy Lewis, but we might come to you, Deputy Guida, to start off with in your capacity as Environment Minister. Another topic which causes quite a lot of conversation and debate, and a lot of people who see this challenge every day, I think, with the worsening effects of sea lettuce. Why is there not a ramping down of the use of blitzing fields with thousands of tons of nitrates every year? So let's start from an environmental agriculture perspective, and then we can come on to the green stuff.
Yes, it so happens that I'm also the chair of the Action for Cleaner Water group, and that brings together all the actors that use nitrate in the island or risk polluting the water in the island, and of course they're trying very, very hard not to do so. One of the things that they've been doing is the very, very precise placement of nitrates, so that they use exactly what's needed and not more, and that's brought down by about 15% the use of nitrates, and we keep refining that as well. There's not just the fact that you put them exactly, for example, if it's potatoes, where the potatoes are, but it's also looking at whole fields with drones, for example, or with satellite imagery, so that your tractor knows that the side of the field needs a little bit more than the other side. So we're working on that to a very, very fine level. So that's one side of the equation, using less nitrates. I think the other side, and that will be in the interest of the Minister for Infrastructure, is actually picking up the silatus, and that's not straightforward. And we've been trying to do so just to get rid of it, but it is actually quite difficult.
Yes.
Indeed. I mean, it's a problem that comes right down the line that obviously I'm responsible for the sewage treatment works, so I'm automatically blamed for that one. But I point out to people, they say, well, there's green algae around the outfall. I said, well, yes, but if you look at the outfall for the streams further up and down the coast, there's also green algae there. So it is runoff from the land as well. So, and I just point out that if people are having showers, obviously which comes down through the sewage treatment works, and there's nitrate in that water, we can't get rid of it at a sewage treatment plant. But what the sewage treatment plant does do, it filters everything, it purifies the water, it destroys the bacteria before it goes out to sea. We do have a new sewage treatment plant coming online in 2023, and that will improve the situation by way of stopping nutrients going into the bay. But, you know, until we sort of get a grip on the actual nitrate situation, I mean, Gregory's explained it well. Farmers are businessmen. They're not going to waste money putting nitrates down where it's not needed. And most of the new tractors now, it's all computer controlled. And as Gregory said, they know within a foot where the field is and where they're planting. And it's very strictly controlled now. But it will take a few years, I would imagine, to flush the nitrates out of the land. Mm-hmm. But it's not just in the bay. I mean, it's in the Bay of Granville, Bay of St. Malo. There's quite a high nitrate level out there as well.
Yes.
So we'll never be completely clear of it. There is some mode of thinking saying that since we built the reclamation site, the bay doesn't get the flush out that it does, which does have a bearing. But if you think about it, the island slopes from north to south, all the valleys run north to south, and it's a very shallow bay in St. Aubyn's. So it's the perfect greenhouse.
Yes.
As soon as the sun comes out, it's the perfect breeding ground for algae,
yes.
which obviously you don't get in St. Juan's Bay, for instance.
Yes.
You know? So it's
Yes.
we're a victim of our geography in that sense.
Yes. And I know that there's a lot of work going on with the agricultural industry. We're doing at Jersey Business quite a lot of work with them as well in terms of technology and much more precision farming and new crops as well to look at how to better manage the land. But it is a challenge.
I'd like to add something. Of course, the methods, the traditional methods have changed quite a lot in agriculture, and you have to think that it's edible products that you're trying to produce. So there are regulations, and you cannot just cover your field with anything. If we did pick up algae, it would have to be treated before it is used in the field.
Right. So complex issue again, and I'm going to move on now, if that's okay, but we'll come back and you can add a little bit extra later. So another topic which has been at the top of the minds of everybody for the last 18 months, and we're going to talk now about COVID, and particularly around the travel policies on COVID. And I think this might be another question for you. You can give it a try. So this is the question. Has there been some change in the rules on arrivals from red list countries? I've read that circa 80 non-residents arriving from South Africa without having to quarantine in the UK or locate in Jersey. What do residents need to do also to return without the need to quarantine from a red list country? So this is a question around.
Well, it's going around, but actually the question is about the British and Irish Lions coming and visiting Jersey. Now, there's always been exemptions. If you remember, when we actually were in lockdown and no travel was allowed, actually we did have a plane with about 150 people leaving and coming every day. And we treated every passenger as an exemption, and we were very, very careful to allow travel to those who really had to travel and those who were safe to do so. And we've continued to do that. So any people or group of people can ask us for an exemption, and we will submit it to our scientist team, and they will tell us whether it is safe or not to do. So in this case, basically, the opportunity presented itself. And frankly, the island had to be grateful. Those guys came here. They brought a lot to the island before going on their tour. They had a fantastic evening that brought a lot of money to Jersey charities. They were really nice to us. So we just wanted to be grateful to them and show them, that they were welcome here. So we went and asked Stack about this. And they said, well, we're not terribly keen on this. They're coming from a red area. So we said, okay, so what requirements would make you change your mind? And they make a long list. They made the long list of requirements. And eventually we had a second meeting with them where they said, well, if we follow those requirements, it will be fine. It is safe. And that's what we did. But the starting point, and that's quite important, is that because of their own health needs, the team traveled throughout South Africa in a bubble. And that was very, very well controlled. It was not, I'm just not going to touch anything. It was people there just to check, that there was no contact, that everything was done in that bubble. So they stayed there in that bubble. They restarted testing 7 days before leaving, and everybody was negative. And then they decided to come here, and we will keep testing them. I mean, they're getting tested every day. So there are some very, very stringent requirements that allowed us to apply this exemption.
Right.
And if anybody else had a particular event that they wanted to do where they want to circumvent the rules, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
If we can ensure that it can be done safely, we don't mind. We're actually welcoming that sort of thing.
Great. So what I'm hearing you saying is that there was a request, a very controlled response. The team and the group have done everything that we have asked them to do, and
Absolutely.
as a result, you and the
Competent
competent authorities group are satisfied that there is no risk to them or to the rest of us from them being here.
Absolutely, and there are many other things. When they first asked, I think there were about 6,000 cases of the beta variant in South Africa, 6,000 known cases. It's collapsed. The Delta variant, which is the one that we have here, is actually so virulent that it took the place of the beta variant. I think there's more people who have it in Germany now than in South Africa, at least according to testing. So the things changed quite a lot in the month and a half that we were considering this.
Okay, so we can be confident that everything's okay.
Absolutely. No,
Great.
we do listen to our scientists.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. So this is a question that I am going to throw open and see who wants to pick up the baton first. So the question is, do you think we should be reversing Charlie Parker's OneGov changes and bring back ministerial accountability for each government department? How about that?
I think each of us should answer that in turn.
Okay, I'm going to give you each a couple of minutes to give us your answer. Who wants to start first? Deputy Lewis, you put your hand up for that.
Yes, is the answer. And I don't think it's ever really gone away. We're still corporation sole, that we have political and legal responsibility for any decision that we make. So that focuses my mind 100%. So I think that everything should be reinstated as it was, yes.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. Very clear. Deputy Guida.
Yes, actually, if I look at the question now, I misread it, but it says accountability.
Yes.
And that really hasn't changed. If anything goes wrong, unfortunately, it falls on our lap and we have to deal with it.
Yes.
I was thinking about the power of the minister within their own department, and that has been diluted a little bit, and it's probably something that we can restore.
Okay, so still ministerial accountability stays,
That hasn't
and
changed.
it hasn't changed, but actually more control over the department would be welcome. And Deputy Huelin, what's your response?
Well, I don't have ministerial accountability. I'm not a minister. I don't have a portfolio. And therefore, I haven't got first-hand experience of that. I witness it. One of the things I have seen, and maybe what Mr. Parker was trying to achieve, is to almost bring a joined-up approach to government. And if anything, whether it's relevant to the question or not, I would like to see far more joined-up thinking and strategic decisions across all ministerial disciplines. And I would like to see going in that direction. The underlying accountability, as I said, I haven't witnessed that firsthand, so I'd rather not comment on that bit.
Okay, so more cross-department working, better collaboration is your message.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay.
Add to that,
Of course.
you may read in the media that ministers have decided to do X, Y, and Z, but a minister who has that portfolio decides, and the other ministers may or may not endorse it.
Right.
So
there is very specific ministerial
Indeed.
responsibility for a set of decisions and a department and an area of activity. And when a decision is made in that area, it is the minister responsible who makes the decision.
indeed, political and legal responsibility.
Great. Okay. So thank you for that. Very candid responses, which is great. We're going to, so firstly, back to our audience, thank you very much for continuing to give us a thumbs up for questions that you are, that you're particularly interested in. We've got a great variety of questions, which is absolutely fantastic. So please continue to do that. We thought it would be quite useful and quite interesting for you to break up the conversation just a little bit. And so we're going to show you a short video on Jersey's island identity. The video brings to life a report that has recently been published, and the report asks the question, what makes Jersey special, and why does this matter? So why is it important to ask these questions? Well, because if we have the answers to them, we can recognise, celebrate and protect our unique identity and our distinctive qualities. So this video will explain a little bit more about that. And again, the island identity is out to a public consultation. So this might inspire you to get involved in the consultation as well. So hopefully we're just about to show the video, and then we'll come back with more Slido questions and with more questions directly to our ministers. So I think the video...
Of the three Crown dependencies, Jersey has the biggest population and the largest economy. We used to have a reputation as the feistiest one, the one that really cared about preserving and enhancing the island's autonomy.
There's a recognition of the importance of the soft power of heritage, culture, language and identity in projecting Jersey on an international stage.
In some ways, it's our responsibility to lead the way.
We set out to define Jersey's identity, how we see ourselves and how others see us, recognising what makes us special so we can protect, nurture and promote it.
Whether you've recently arrived in Jersey or can trace your family back over many generations, all of us who love this island know that we are part of a special and unique place, but one that cannot be taken for granted.
The people, they go beyond to help each other.
You just walk into a shop, you walk down the street and people are like, hello. At the beginning I was just taken aback.
What makes Jersey really distinct is the multicultural society we have. My mum is from Madeira and my dad is from Portugal mainland, and they met over here. The sense of community that everyone has, the music and the food, even my English friends coming down and appreciating our culture, food and music always brings people together.
We've got the Jersey Royals and we've got the Jersey cow, so preserving them is a main thing.
Very passionate about farming in Jersey, have been now for 30 years. We need to be encouraging more younger farmers into the industry. Government has a part to play in that.
One day I'd like to have my own farm. Lots of animals and it'd be very busy.
Tourists will always say the fish is great. We have to work so much harder, as opposed to our French colleagues, to the English boats, to get the same amount of money.
We need to look into making Jersey an all-year-round destination.
There are good initiatives, like the fact that we've been providing milk cows to Rwanda. Lots of good things we can do to strike a subtly different pose from this rich man's hideaway, tuck your money in Jersey, no questions asked, which I'm afraid isn't fair, but it's a reputation that casts a long shadow.
Hopefully in 10 years' time, Jersey will be perceived in quite a different way, with sort of moral conscience at the heart of everything that the government does and the people do.
younger generation are born into the digital age now.
Jersey is highly connected. There's a lot of support for new business and digital growth.
Digital provides new opportunities to give Jersey a new identity.
Making digital work for the sectors that are already highly successful here.
The sport in Jersey is huge. So you've got your rugby, your football, your boxing.
Surfing, sailing, hobie catting, kayaking, they're all part of our DNA.
We've brought out some amazing athletes in such a small island.
Yeah, every time we put on the jersey, always a proud moment.
The amount of support is massive, and it shows what that means to the community within Jersey.
You don't have to be a #1 athlete to actually enjoy sport.
Sport can provide the foundations for a lot of great characteristics.
It helps people find their own identity.
Jersey is defined by its culture, history and environment, but most of all by its people. Join the debate. What does Jersey mean to you?
I hope that everyone who feels the privilege of living in this island will engage in the conversation about what it means to be a part of this community. We can be proud of our island and maintain it for future generations.
Well, wasn't that an amazing video? I think it really goes to show the breadth and the depth of our culture, heritage, people and an environment here in Jersey. It's really quite a vibrant and exciting video, and really I think explains why so many people move here and so many people love living here. And we were just having a conversation, Deputy Guida, whilst the video was playing, about some of the results that came out of the consultation and some of the ideas that have been put forward.
Absolutely. I suggest that everybody go and visit the website. It's quite interesting. And there's a report on the consultation which actually asks the questions rather than answering them. But the last few pages of the report are quite extraordinary because they're like a brainstorming on what do you think can be done to improve Jersey's self-image. And I mean, one of them, it is so Jersey, it made me laugh. And it was the idea of having a special qualifications cake. And when we've done your 10 years, and if you're finally, the housing market is finally open to you, if you can find a mortgage, then you make a special cake.
Yes.
And that would be, it would be completely unique to Jersey. So the Jersey specificity is still something that we can work on. It is still something that we can develop. And I think that's the best idea that comes out of this document.
Yes. So this is that's really great. Thank you. And as you say, really some very interesting questions, and celebrating being Jersey and being in Jersey, I think, is really part of what that document is all about. So you have an opportunity to have your say on the document and on the consultation. So so please feel free to go online and have a look at that. So we're going to head back to Slido now. Thank you again for giving the thumbs up to the questions that you feel are most important to you. And the first one that we're coming to now is, I think, for Deputy Lewis. Well, to start off with it, yes, for you. This is the question. The current recycling rate in Jersey is well below the UK and Guernsey levels. What have you, Minister, been doing to improve our dismal record in this area?
Right, well, it's getting better every year, is all I can say. Historically, the parishes have taken care of all refuse collections, etc., even though we deal with refuse down at the energy from waste plants. And that's been extended now to recycling, so the parishes are doing their own recycling as well, in the sense they do the collections and bring it down. I mean, all the parishes are interested now. I think we have 9 parishes are now on board. We had recent times, we had St Peter in 2019, and we've just had St Wand come on board as well. So we're delighted at that. And other parishes are now making inquiries that what they can do to do recycling as well. So it's happening all over the island. And some places like St Helier do their own recycling, but we take care of most of the other ones. Infrastructure, it's all brought to us and recycled. And that can't be recycled is sent away for recycling.
That's great, thank you. It does seem to me, and maybe some other people who are watching, slightly strange that we've got 9 different ways of collecting recycling, and that it all goes to the same place. I know that's probably quite a controversial thing to say, because the parishes are in charge of it, but maybe that's something to bear in mind in terms of making it more efficient as we go forward, and actually might encourage more people to recycle.
Well, in fact, the items that can't be recycled, just general refuse, go to the energy from waste plants, which is then incinerated, generates steam for the boilers, and basically 7% of the electricity used in Jersey is generated from the energy from waste plant. So there's a kind of recycling even through the waste.
Right, okay, yes. An interesting and, as you say, complex area again. So our next question, which is about housing. So I'm going to ask the question, and then we can see who wants to take this up. So, with 1-bedroom flats being advertised at almost 10 times the average salary, and the predicted exodus due to follow due to the unaffordability of the island in general, would it be fair to say that in the coming years, Jersey will not even need a population policy? Possibly, Deputy Huelin, you'd like to address that.
This is a really interesting question, because we will need a population policy, and we'll need a population policy for totally different reasons. There's only one thing worse than a growing population in a small island community, and that is a shrinking population. It is fundamentally wrong, these sales, but I do have a belief that I'm sort of calling it the FOMO market. It was very similar to the market in London in 1987, 88 and 89, when there was in 89 there was a massive property slump, which was created initially because of the fear of missing out, this panic buy. If you don't buy now, you won't ever buy. And that created a huge slump, which created vast amounts of negative equity. And I remember a lot of dear friends of mine suffering from that, and keys were being thrown into estate agents and saying, you know, I'll never get over this slump, and moving on. Very, very wrong. I'm acutely aware of that. I'm very, very concerned about it. And we have to manage that clearly. The only way to do it, I'm afraid, is to build. And people aren't going to like some of the ideas, but if we had a faster planning process and we could streamline it, you know, we could build houses very, very quickly. I believe in a project has just with MMC, Modern Construction Techniques, has just put 34 buildings or apartments up. I think it's in Ealing in West London in 14 weeks. We can do that very, very easily if we want to. We've just got to have the will to do that and to change that. So a lot of it is self-inflicted wounds, I'm afraid, but we have to address that very, very seriously.
So, when you're looking at population policy, are you also taking into account planning and housing? And obviously it's not directly related, but there is a little bit of a tension there, isn't there?
Well, when with the previous question, when we were asked about Mr. Parker's government and accountability, the one thing about the population policy, it has to engage the support of every single ministerial area to bring that one together. And that includes housing and includes education. So I'm working with the various ministers to make sure that I will have an overriding policy, but has to have the support of the other ministers to bring that in. I can't write the housing policy, but I can try and persuade and cajole a housing policy that adopts that, if that makes sense. And yes, it's very high. It's high on my agenda on the population policy to influence that, and we have to do it quickly. Yeah. And that's not just open market that we see. I mean, it is ludicrous that we're building 1- and 2-bedroom flats in town without working out that people who buy their first home in a 1- and 2-bedroom flat, ultimately, statistically, a large number of those are going to have families, and they don't want to live with a child in a 1-bedroom flat, 2-bedroom flat. They have to move up to the 3-bedroom home, the home for life. And we haven't got a joined-up planning process to actually. We have to determine each building in isolation and not joined up as to how it will fit in with the overall housing population policy.
And we know from the work that we're doing at Jersey Business as well that there are different techniques, as you were saying, about looking at different ways of construction and also different types of construction that actually would be able to respond to that. If there was a more coordinated response, would actually be able to respond very quickly.
Deputy Labby has put together a group of 3 of us, and we've received submissions from 3 different organisations who have complementary construction techniques. One's more akin to block of flats, one's more akin to, should we say, smaller houses, and one's more akin to more luxury houses, all made in factories elsewhere and ported over here. Sustainability is fantastic. The environment, the construction is far better for the environment. The time to do it is fantastic. It involves less labour doing it, because obviously we struggle with all the other projects that are going on in the island. We're going to build a hospital. Why did I mention that? We're going to build a hospital. We're going to build a government building. We have got Fort Regent projects and others. So we are struggling for that talent to be on board. So this ticks every single box. Reduces cost, reduces skills required to do it, reduces time to delivery. It's a really important thing. It's not part of my population policy, so I've just gone off on a tangent. But I think it's a really important message for young to understand that we are, those who want to buy, that we're addressing it.
Great, okay, and addressing it as part of an overall and a collaborative approach.
A collaborative
to all of
approach to
these problems.
government. I'm working very closely with Deputy Labby on that.
Great, okay. Did you want to add something?
Yes, a friend of ours, my wife and our son, has just bought an apartment, small 1-bedroom flat with his partner for over £350,000, which I think is absolutely horrendous amount of money. As Rowland just said, that people obviously in time have children and have to move on, and it's just a horrendous amount of money to have to pay for young people. It's a huge anchor around their neck. That I would like to see the return of the state's loan scheme, possibly for young people who need to get onto the property ladder.
Great, okay, lots of ideas. Also an opportunity to feed into the population policy as well. So I'm sure if you respond to that, then you can add your ideas to it, and they will be taken up and worked in collaboration. So we're moving on to something completely different now, and this is a question for you, Deputy Guida. Will you be, it's coming via email this time, will you be looking at changing the law on the handling of the sex offenders register next year, should you continue as Home Affairs Minister? So quite a popular question.
Well, yeah, so fortunately that question was asked at the Assembly with a little bit more precision. And basically, when a sexual offender is sentenced today, with the sentence, which usually is going to be incarceration, there's also a period during which the sex offender will be on the sex offender list, and when they come out of jail, will be controlled, will be under supervision. There was this question that if somebody had to spend 5 years in jail and then got a 5 years listing on the sex offender register, then they would come out and their listing would have expired at the same time.
Right.
Of course, you must give a little bit of credit to the magistrates, and they are well aware of how this works together. So, for example, right now, sentences actually include an extra part that is taken off automatically. It used to be that when you went to jail and comported yourself nicely, you know, when you had good conduct, you'd get a little bit of your sentence shaved off. But there was a court case, and they decided that it was discriminatory, so everybody should benefit from it. Right. So now, for example, if you get a 9-year sentence, you are only going to do 6 years. Right. That is it. Magistrates know that.
Right.
So they're well aware that people will only do the first 6 years. So if they want somebody to do 6 years, they're going to ask for 9 years, and they'll get it.
Right.
If they want somebody to have an extra 6 years on the registry after that, they'll ask for 12.
Right.
They can do maths. So it's already pretty much in hand. Okay. However, it is no hardship to change the law, right, and to say that we can start the presence on the registry after people leave prison.
Right.
So as soon as that is possible, as soon as we have the opening in low drafting time, or when we actually change the law, it is very, very probably something I'll do if it's during my term, or that my successor will do, because again, it is no trouble at all.
Right, so it is your intention to go down that route?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, Deputy Lewis, we're coming back to you, and we're coming back to transport. So moving on, I've missed the question. Could we go back to sorry, I haven't got the question. So I think we will move on and come back to the cycle question. I think the question was about cycle lanes in Havre de Pas, and though I know is a consultation on traffic calming measures around that area. So, okay. So here we go. The proposed new Don Road and Havre de Pas cycle lanes, are they expanded to other parishes? And are you actually going to take the public's opinion into consideration, or just ride roughshod and do it anyway? Wow, that's a tongue twister. So question is about cycle lanes, and are you expanding them to other parishes?
I would like to expand the cycle, if I can deal with them separately, cycle lanes. I want to expand across the whole island if possible. We were very, very lucky in the sense that we inherited the Western Railway network, Great Western, and it's when the railway disappeared, we still had it as a walk. Now it's a combined walkway and cycleway, so you can actually cycle all the way from Corbière Lighthouse all the way down to Havre de Pas without leaving the cycle network. And we've added bits to it, and we've just added a toucan crossing at Pontmarquet. Lots of people ask me, what is a toucan? Sort of toucan. It's for cyclists and pedestrians, so toucan cross.
Right.
And it's part of the Safer Routes to School scheme that I'm trying to encourage, which dovetails with this question regarding Havre de Pas, which is actually a parish of St Helier scheme. That's not one of mine. And the Don Road scheme, it's out to consultation, and yes, we are listening to people. We're not going to do it anyway. It's out to consultation. If people think it's a good idea, then please let us know. If you think it's a bad idea, likewise, please let us know that too. We've done various schemes recently in St Clement's. We've done Bagatelle Lane in St Saviour, and we're working with the parish of St Saviour on other schemes. Bel Air Lane, for instance, that one is in the pipeline, and hopefully that's coming to fruition soon.
Great.
But we need to join the dots, as it were, rather than have small sections of cycle network. We need to have a cycle network that is A to Z, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like, that parents don't feel safe allowing their children to cycle to school. So until we have a cycling network in place, it's going to be very difficult, because parents don't feel safe letting their children cycle, so they take them in the car or they go on the bus.
And of course, encouraging cycling and walking is part of Jersey's response to the climate change challenge. And so actually having a joined up approach to this, and it will then enable more people to get out of their cars and onto cycles. But it does need to be joined up. You're absolutely right. Otherwise, people just won't do it.
I mean, part of the problem also is, unlike anywhere else, for instance, say in the UK, where they can build a bypass around a town or whatever, we can't do that because of the topography of the island, and it's obviously heavily built up. And it's very, very difficult to build new roads. A new road hasn't been built for years. So everything we do is a retrofit, that we have to retrofit our roads to get cyclists in, to get vehicles in, and it's very, very difficult.
Yes.
That you get people who don't think cyclists should have room, and you have cyclists who think that vehicles should get over. It's finding that happy medium that's very difficult. And we're trying lots of things now, like Snow Hill. That's an experiment. It may not work, but we have to try this.
Great. Okay, so experiment is good, and responding to the consultation so that you can have your say is also really important, so I would encourage you to do that. So, Deputy Huelin, over to you now, and again, different conversation, different question. It's not, is it not time to stop locally invited tax exiles taking over Jersey landmarks for luxury homes such as Booley Bay? I think this is a question about the planning application
I think
down there.
First, the 2-1Es, as they are known, are only allowed to buy one property as their main home. I think we have a situation that Booty Bay has been empty for quite a long time. Now, if I had my way, I would make sure that that became a hotel again, because it is the most beautiful of locations. We all know that, and has been a hotel for many, many years. But there hasn't been a take-up for that. I believe, and I stand corrected if I've got this one wrong, there was some applications more latterly to convert it into holiday apartments or apartments that didn't proceed. Whether it wasn't financially viable, I don't know. But we have an offer to convert a very large, all but derelict property in the island to become a spectacular home. Now, I also believe, and I'm going to get the names wrong, I think the bar there was called the Black Dog. I could be wrong. Thank you, Kevin. And there is the scuba diving centre down there. I believe all of these local businesses are to be accommodated in the plans. So what we have is a situation of somebody who's prepared to invest a significant amount of their own money to make a home for themselves and accommodate the local community. So apart from not being a hotel, and we know we are declining hotels over here, and that's another story altogether, what is not to like about it? Now, we can then say, are 2-1Es exploiting the market? They're not. They're only allowed to buy one. That is perfectly accepted within their legislation. I think it should be encouraged personally, but and I think so does the Constable Trinity, who's speaking very much in support as well.
Great. So not so much exploiting, but more regenerating, in your view?
Absolutely. It's been sitting there empty for a long time. If somebody's prepared to invest that amount of money and that amount of time to do something that really will be quite spectacular, we should encourage it.
Great.
No other offers have been coming forward.
Okay. Thank you for that, and thank you for that response. So back over to climate change. I think we'll start with you, Deputy Guida, first, and then over to you, Deputy Lewis, I think, here. But this is a question about the IPCC report on climate change, which was just recently, in the last day, issued, talking quite a lot about how significant the challenge still remains in terms of trying to keep the world's temperatures from warming significantly. What are the steps? The question is, what new steps are ministers going to take to quickly and significantly, emphasised, move the needle on sustainability in Jersey over the next 5 years? Change is difficult, climate breakdown is worse, and can still be stabilised by prompt, ambitious and comprehensive action. So I think this is a question about how serious are you about it really?
I'll start. Okay. Well, it is quite important. The IPCC report doesn't actually bring anything new in the balance. What it looks at is all the things that we knew were happening, and it's trying to see how well we know them, how certain we are that it's happening. And it takes, again, things that we've been studying, that we've been seeing for decades, and just saying, well, now we're pretty sure that this is exactly what's happening. This one, not so sure, but that one, yes, definitely. Now it's almost guaranteed that it is. And it is telling us, for those who accepted climate change, it is telling us that we were right. It is happening. There's absolutely no doubt. Yeah. It is happening, and it is anthropogenic. Basically, it's human-based. Yeah. It's our consumption of fossil fuels that is driving it. What it is saying as well is that it thinks that it can be slowed down enough to not degenerate into an absolute catastrophe. Mm-hmm. It also confirms that the time scale in general is kept. So for example, we're looking at a 1 meter rise in seawater mm-hmm. in 100 years at the end of the century. So all this to say that it doesn't bring anything new, except that it does comfort the, if all the naysayers now have something saying, no, sorry, all this stuff is absolutely real. Now, Jersey.
The question is Jersey. What are we doing about it?
The thing about Jersey, first of all, Jersey is very, very tiny. So our influence on the global climate is nil. It's very, very small. However, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do nothing. The second thing about it is that we have no industry. So we start with about 50% less emissions than any other country. Then all of our electricity is actually from sustainable sources. It's about 60% nuclear, 30% tidal, and we're among very, very few people on the planet we can say that they have tidal power, and the 7% that we take from refuse, from recycling our trash. So
what,
no industry.
What is our focus?
Sorry?
What is our focus going forward?
So it does come down to the remaining ones, which are transport and heating.
Right.
So we're looking at that very, very carefully. We've had the Citizen Assembly. They've come up with quite extraordinary ideas. But I think what we can get from them, and Deputy Lewis said it, is their ambition.
Yes.
It was a large group of people. They were representative of the island. They were selected at random, and after having been taught what the problem was, they were all extremely ambitious in trying to resolve it. And we're going to try to translate this ambition into measures that we will bring to the Assembly early in 2022. Okay. And those are specific measures. Having said all this, we did start. We have a sustainable transport policy. There are things that we're already doing.
We've gone some way, and
yes.
I'm going to thank you for setting the scene on that, because that I think was really very helpful in terms of where we're at. I'm going to ask one final question, which is quite specific and maybe will give you an idea to put into the plan that's coming at the beginning of next year, which is, if the government is serious about the environment, why don't you look at removing duty on biofuels, which can then be used in vehicles? It's expensive to get it in the island, so surely without any duty added on, it will encourage more to use it. Deputy Lewis, what's your response to that?
Absolutely.
Is this part of an idea to go in the plan?
This is something that we've been discussing. That there's 50p difference, I believe, between biodiesel and regular diesel. And if we want to encourage more people to use the biodiesels, then obviously there needs to be some encouragement there. But obviously, that's something we need to arrange with Treasury and various other departments, and of course Gregory's. But I'm old enough to remember queuing up at I think it was the Chelsea Hotel to get the tax disc in the 70s and 80s to buy your car tax, and somebody came up with a great idea of do away with the tax disc, and then we'll put a few p on the price of petrol, and that'll pay for the roads, etc., which is brilliant. That's what happened. But now with electrification, we're going to lose that money. So we need to generate extra revenue to pay for the upkeep of roads. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in that. But I fully agree with the premise of at least have a parity with regular diesel, if not cheaper. That would be good.
Okay, so we can look forward to seeing that when the plans come forward in the new year. We can maybe come back and have a further conversation about all of the different elements of how we actually are going to tackle the climate challenge in Jersey. So we're almost out of time, which is amazing because it's gone so fast and we've had some really great questions. I'd like to thank you for posing your questions and to say to those people, if we haven't come to your questions, that we will be taking account of them and hopefully we will be able to respond in one way or another in the near future to those. Just by way of a wrap up, we've talked through a lot of different issues here, all really, really challenging, all really, really pertinent: climate change, population policy, Brexit and international relations. These are all massive opportunities, I think, for Jersey, as well as challenges, around particular strategy and policy making. So I'm mindful that the election, the next general election in Jersey, is 9 months away. And so I'm interested to know, by way of a final wrap-up, I'm going to give you each a minute and maybe a little bit to say, given the next 9 months and where we're going to be going with that, what is one thing that you want to achieve between now and the next election, and Why should somebody vote in Jersey? Because the turnout for voting in the elections here is not that high. So I want to know what you're going to do between now and then, and why somebody should engage in the next general election by way of voting. Very quickly, let's start with you, Deputy Guida.
Difficult to do quickly because I wouldn't like to talk about one. I think what this government has done is that it has had the courage to tackle a very, very large number of things that needed doing. And we've started all these projects. We got delayed by COVID, but we're desperate to finish them. And I mean, who's taking care of the hospital? You know, who's trying to get the hospital built? Who's trying to get Fort Regent done? Who's trying to get all of our sports infrastructure, sports and community infrastructure renewed, because it is very old, it is not satisfactory. So to tackle all those things, I'm not even talking about Brexit, you know, again, how hard that was, and that's far from done. There's 10 or 12 issues that this government has tackled, and we are desperate to get them done before we leave.
And is that your pitch to say?
It is.
Go out and vote?
In Home Affairs, there's legislation. There's 4 or 5 pieces of legislation that we found extremely important. For example, the prejudice law or the domestic abuse, the domestic abuse law.
So lots coming up.
So that's very, very important. It takes years to fulfill, and we absolutely want to get that done.
Okay.
All the other ministries have their list of things that they want to do.
Great. Okay. A big long list here. Deputy Lewis, what's your one thing?
Equally long list, I'm afraid.
Okay, keep it to the very
I'll keep
point.
it to the bare minimum. Obviously, prior to COVID, the bus company were up 40% in previous years, and I would like to bring that back to its what it was previously. As I mentioned, electrification would be good, or hydrogen buses, but electric bus is 3 times as expensive as a conventional bus, and even more so for hydrogen buses. So once that fee comes down with mass production and they become a little bit cheaper, I would like to regenerate the whole bus strategy. And obviously, safer routes to school is my main priority, to get young students from A to B on their bikes as safely as they can without disrupting major traffic schemes.
Great. So safe and sustainable transport links and routes. Great. Thank you for that. Deputy Huelin.
Deliver the population policy to the Assembly.
Right.
And mine's an easy job, really, isn't it, as far as volume? And also to put a spade in the ground for the hospital. That is really, really tight because of some of the challenges that we've had and some of the delays that have been thrust upon us. But with a very strong wind, we might just get a spade in the ground in this particular term. And that is really what I want to do. You know, the hospital has cost a lot of money so far and nobody's seen anything for it. And the next Assembly does not deserve to take that over from us, and the island doesn't deserve to spend another penny unnecessarily on this hospital. We need this hospital by 2026. Gloucester Street is crumbling. The figures that if we don't deliver and leave Gloucester Street by the end of 2026 are eye-watering, and the island's health will suffer. That is what I will be working very hard on doing. And then, of course, I have my parish, but I haven't got time for that.
Great. So thank you very much for that. A very definite stake in the ground there from you for the hospital. No questions tonight about the hospital, but I'm sure that they will come back on the agenda for future sessions. So we're pretty much out of time now, and it just falls on me to wrap up the conversation. And I think really it's a very, very big and sincere thank you to you, our audience online, for taking part in this session tonight and for asking your questions. Some really quite hard-hitting, quite succinct. Definitely shows your passion for these issues, and I'm sure our panel here have really taken that on board. There are obviously a number of consultations where you can continue to share your views, so I would really encourage you to do that. Particular thanks to our panel here tonight for being open and honest with us and for sharing your views about some of the challenges that you have, but also your vision for the future. So Deputy Guida, Deputy Lewis and Deputy Huelin, thank you very, very much for being here.
Thank you.
It's been very enjoyable spending the last hour and a bit with you.
Can I say one thing?
A very small thing.
Very small thing. it didn't come up, but I'd just like to congratulate all the A-level students on their exceptionally good results, beating the UK again. And we must not forget the teachers that helped them get there, and the parents who were probably doing homeschooling during the course of this extraordinary period that we've had. So congratulations to all of them.
Yes, congratulations. What a great achievement. And if through a very challenging time, I think the last 18 months have been difficult for everybody. So lots of smiles, I'm sure, amongst parents and people coming out of with their exam results, and looking forward to what the next challenge for them is going to be. Talking about the next challenge, we have another Ask the Panel session for Ask the Ministers, I should say, session coming up on the 21st of September. It'll be 7 o'clock again. I would encourage you to put that date in your diary so that you're here, and information about the ministers or the panel will be shared closer to the time. So put that in your diary, and thank you very, very much for being involved in the session tonight.